So I started trading the futures markets many, many years ago. And although I've managed to make a bunch of money at it and it's been radically life changing, I've also lost a ton of money, especially at first when I started out. And in this video, I'm going to give you a simple rundown of the things I wish I knew before I started. Hopefully, this video will help you cut through all of the mistakes that I made and become successful much faster than I did. How's it going out there? My name is Stephen J. Campbell. I'm a full time futures trader and I teach people how to trade. And I post videos up daily on this channel on how to make money in the markets and how to minimize your losses. This is an AI free zone. Everything I'm saying right now is just my thoughts. So cut me some slack if I mess up, but let's get right to it, okay? First of all, you have to have the right reason when you start trading. Reasons matter. Everybody starts for basically the same reason. I don't think there's a single person out there who says, "Hey, I've always wanted to learn how the financial markets work, so I think I'll throw a bunch of money into the futures market." Now, it's more like this. They see somebody trading online, standing next to a $150,000, $200,000 car. They think, "Oh, that guy says I can make $10,000 a day. I can get rich doing that." And look, I'm not judging you for that. It's probably what attracted all of us in the beginning. But wanting to get rich isn't a strong enough reason to carry you through the parts that'll happen when trading becomes actually hard. And trust me, at times it's going to be hard. I had to find my real reason myself. Now, look, I don't have any education, quite frankly, high school dropout, but I am a technically minded person and I think in systems. I can pick things up wicked super fast. I was the smart kid when I was younger. People hand me their phones to solve their problems for them. But in a way, that actually ended up hurting me in the long run. And we'll get more on that later. But more importantly, I wanted to build a better life and a future for my family. I wanted to learn a skill that nobody could take away from me, a skill that equalizes everybody. And that was enough for me to take a leap and take on the challenge of futures trading, even when the journey became way harder and ended up being a little bit longer to take than I expected. So, without a strong personal reason for doing this, the inevitable setbacks you're going to face are going to make it really easy to quit. You're going to blame somebody else, or you're going to decide, like the 90 some odd percent that are vocal majority on you on the internet, that trading is a scam, it just doesn't work. And the truth is, trading's not a scam, but it is hard. And your reason has to be strong enough to get you through those hard parts. Now, the second thing I learned is that trading's not for everybody, or at least to say it's not for everybody at that point in life you might be at right now. See, certain people, they have relationships with money. These relationships in their head, their psychology, it makes trading extremely dangerous and hard for them. Other people just don't have enough consistency in their lives right now to give this the time and the attention it requires. You don't need every day, but you need to be able to have uninterrupted time to study this stuff, at least a few days a week. My wife and I, we had to come to an understanding about what this was going to actually take. It meant I would have to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning Pacific time so I could wipe the sleep out of my eyes and trade the New York Open without being half asleep and groggy. It meant studying and logging my trades and taking thousands of trades before I could really understand what I was actually doing. And that was something we both decided to accept. Now, we'll get to more on your family in a minute because there's a little secret thing that you don't know is coming if you tell them about this. But the truth is, if you're desperate for money right now, trading isn't going to fix that desperation. If anything, it's going to make it way worse and it's going to force you to do reckless things. Now, sure, you could follow some crazy guy on YouTube, Wall Street Bets style, use a huge amount of leverage, try to turn 500 bucks into 5 million overnight, but that's not going to work. You're probably just going to lose that money. Then you're going to lose some more. Then you're going to be desperate. You're going to be more broke than you already were. Now, see, this requires consistency. It requires patience. And most of all, it's going to require you to be in a mental and financial position where every trade doesn't feel like it needs to save your life somehow. Now, the next lesson is that trying to figure everything else out by yourself, it's going to cost you an enormous amount of time and money. What you need is a complete system. We call it an edge when you're trading. You need clear instruction. You need somebody who can show you what actually matters and, more importantly, what doesn't matter at all. And that doesn't mean that anybody's going to magically turn you into a profitable trader overnight. You still have to practice. You still are going to need to develop that discipline. You still have to learn how to personally react to both when you're winning and you're losing money. But there's a massive difference between trying to assemble a trading system from 500 little disconnected YouTube videos and shorts you see and learning one complete system in order to be able to supposed to learn it properly. And that brings me to the next thing I wish I knew. For at least the first 6 months, if not the first year, you shouldn't be risking any amount of capital on this. That means you shouldn't be spending money on cash accounts. You shouldn't be spending money on prop firms. You shouldn't be spending your own money at all. The problem with spending your own money is that when you lose it, you get emotional about chasing it back. So instead of learning how to trade, now you're what you're doing is you're learning how to lose more by chasing those losses. So put it this way, right? If you came to Vegas, where I live, and you'd never played a single hand of poker in your life, you couldn't tell the difference between a royal flush and a pair of eights. You wouldn't sit down at a video poker machine, put in $100 at a time, and hope that as you're feeding the machine, you can learn poker while playing, would you? Of course, you wouldn't do that. So why would you put money into a financial market when you don't understand what a moving average is, you don't know price action, you don't know the patterns to look for, or what actually causes a market to move? So you can practice this for free or very little money. TradingView has paper trading. There are other platforms that allow you to simulate free trades while not risking anything. And I justified spending money myself early on. I kept telling myself, well, at least I have skin in the game. At least there's something on the line. But those prop firm challenges that I was blowing, that money started to add up and add up some more. And it adds up especially fast when you don't know what you're doing and you're chasing that loss. My personal advice would be this, right? Paper trade to a point where you have $3,000 in trading profits without giving it back for at least 30 days. You probably shouldn't be risking any meaningful amounts of money until that can happen. So prove to yourself that you can follow a system when nothing is on the line before you try following it when there's actual real dollars and cents involved. The next thing is, and this is so important, there's zero shortcuts. There's no magic indicator. There's no 1 minute long YouTube short that can tell you what to look for every day to master the markets. The markets contain a certain amount of randomness. An edge doesn't exactly tell us what'll happen next. The edge, or your system, simply identifies a situation where one outcome is way more likely than the other. And if we play that edge consistently, if we control our losses when we're wrong, if the edge is real and we execute it properly, the math will always work out in our favor over time. The mistake I made was watching one video, finding one indicator, and trying it for a few trades. Then that wouldn't work. So I'd go to another video and do another guy's part of his system. I wouldn't get the whole system. I would just look at his video. I'd try an indicator, I would fail, and I'd move on. And before I knew it, I was trying 10 different things, and none of them had been tested long enough for me to know whether or not they actually worked. So every time you jump into a new strategy, you interrupt the repetition that's required to master the one you're already learning. This is actually why I created 1K a day. It's my own program. It gives my complete training system in the order that I think you need to learn it. Instead of trying to piece together disconnected information from hundreds of different videos, you got a clear system. 80 to 90% is what I trade at. Most of my students are the same. I show you the setups to look for, how to read price action, where I enter, where I'd stay out, and how I manage to trade while I'm in it. What it does is it gives you a fast track over a lot of the confusion. You don't have to spend a year searching for a system because I'm giving you the complete system you can use. I got more than 1,400 students that have joined. If you want to learn the entire system and just pass over all the mistakes, click the link below. You type in the special code, you get the system for a huge discount. But whether you use my system or find something else that works for you, the important lesson is the same. Find one complete system and stick with it long enough to truly understand it. I learned this the hard way. At the time, my mentor introduced me to a trader on YouTube who I began following. And as I was learning it and practicing it, it was working just fine. Then, during the period right after Donald Trump got elected, I discovered that I could go into the markets when they opened, put in two positions, make $500 in nearly half a second, and then walk away for the day. I thought I had everything figured out. The truth was that almost anybody could do that at that time. Everybody was a genius all of a sudden. Click button, chart goes up. But instead of recognizing the market conditions for what they were, which is known as a rising tide raises all ships, I started thinking I had outgrown the system I had been learning. Then January came, and January comes and the bankers always come back. The market changes. The bankers that control the markets with the huge financial institutions all decided the market was too high. We're going to sell market. And suddenly, I couldn't understand why what I had been doing all November into December wasn't working anymore. I lost $16,000 in a single day. That was a lesson. It was. But I wasn't working on what I was doing because I had abandoned my system. And before I knew it, I was blowing accounts left, right, and center. I had taken 10 giant steps backwards. I took 2 steps forward and I had to regroup. I had to return to fundamentals and I basically had to do it all over again. And I had abandoned that system I was learning because temporarily it was easy mode. Easy money made me believe I didn't need it anymore. That decision, it erased a lot of my progress. Another lesson I had to learn was not to trade absolutely everything. Different assets behave differently. Different sessions behave differently. Every market has its own personality and its own little quirks. See, a lot of people they start trading futures with ES, and that's the S&P 500 futures. Then they discover NQ. They discover it moves faster and you can maybe make more money. So they'll jump over to NQ. Then they learn about the New York Open, Power Hour, London session, Tokyo session, and every other time of the day when something maybe might be moving. And before they know it, they're trading every market during every session, thinking that more opportunities must mean more money. That's exactly what happened to me. I became a jack of all trades and a master of none. Everything new seemed sexier than the last thing I was doing because I couldn't imagine myself making more money from it, but I hadn't stayed with anything long enough to actually master it. So, constantly switching markets, it prevents you from learning the behavior of any one market deeply enough to develop a repeatable edge. Now, all markets are generally the same if they're healthy, but choose one market. Learn how it behaves during a specific trading session. Learn one system for trading it. Stay focused until you can execute that system consistently. Once I stopped jumping around like House of Pain in the 1990s, and by the way, give me a subscription if you got the 90s reference or you found it amusing. Once I stopped doing that, I began focusing on one system. I was studying it carefully, and I finally started seeing measurable progress. I went from blowing a prop firm account every day to every 2 days. Then it became every 5 days. And eventually, I held a prop firm account and passed it. I had it for 2 months. Now, that might not sound like success to everybody, but it really was real progress. It proved that focused repetition was actually working. And you have to be obsessive enough to study this, but disciplined enough to limit yourself. Because the next lesson I learned might sound strange, but I'd be careful about telling every friend and family member that you're learning to trade. Now, I'm not saying this because you should lie to your spouse. I mean, if you're waking up very early or taking your family's money to trade with, the person you share your life with obviously needs to know what you're doing. But my friends and family often try to protect me from the things that they don't understand, and they'll do the same with you. When I told people I was learning to trade, many of them compared it to gambling. They warned me that it was going to fail. I tried to explain that it wasn't like randomly pulling a handle on a slot machine. It was more like being a professional poker player or a blackjack player who can keep track of the count on the cards, who understands the game and has a real edge. But they wouldn't understand it. Nah, I don't blame them. They weren't trying to hurt me. What they were trying to do is protect me from something they thought would hurt me. The problem is that now you have those voices chirping away in the back of your mind every time you lose. So, what you need is positive reinforcement. You need a good teacher, somebody you can reach out to. You need a community of people that you can find that understand what you're trying to accomplish. Now, if you watch my trades and subscribe to this channel, I post daily on what worked and what didn't for the day. But whatever you do, just pick carefully. You don't need to follow someone posing with a Ferrari. Anyone can rent the car. I live in Vegas. It's $495. I too could convince you that you could make $10,000 a day if I told you the car was mine. You following what I'm putting down here? Just be cautious. Always be skeptics. The next lesson is extremely important too, and it's not to get ahead of yourself. The first time you start making money or the first time you receive a payout, You might want to run around and tell everybody that you've officially made it as a trader, but you haven't made it quite yet. And I hate to break it to you, but one successful week, one successful month, or even one payout doesn't mean you've mastered trading. It's like going to school to become a neurosurgeon. They aren't going to let you do well on one test and then immediately go cut into somebody's brain. When I experienced success early on, I told everybody the money I was making. I even announced I had an exact day where I was going to quit my day job. That day, that month, that time, exactly what I was going to do. And you know what happened? That day, that month, that time came and it passed. I never actually quit my day job. I didn't have the means to. I went into drawdown. That's when you lose money. But that's where my head was at. Like I believed I had figured everything out. And just understand this, one profitable period doesn't mean you've mastered anything. You can make money for several months and then enter a losing period, that drawdown. And that exposes everything that you need to learn. I thought I knew everything that December. What I didn't know was that it was going to be a very cold January for me. And when all those bankers came back to the market conditions and they all changed, I got knocked down a rung. See, we're trading against some of the most sophisticated institutions and brilliant financial minds in the world. You have to respect that. So just stay humble, okay? Be grateful for your progress, continue learning, because the second you believe you know everything, the market will probably remind you that you don't. The next lesson is that you have to get your head straight and confront some of your past beliefs that you hold. This is way more complicated, and I think it'll be the subject of some videos on this channel. I had to understand something extremely important about myself in order to get ahead. When I finally started seeing consistent success, meaning I might be green 3 or 4 days out of 5 on a trading week, when I started to see real money from the market being deposited into my account, strange thoughts started coming through my head. I started thinking negatively about what I was doing. I remember asking myself, what am I even doing here? I just made more money in a day, in a 20-minute period, than a teacher might make in an entire week teaching a bunch of kids in school. Do I actually deserve this? And those thoughts, like they started ruling me. I had to read Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. It's a fantastic book. Get the modern day edition. It's a very old book, nearly 100 years old. But I had to do a lot of deep reflection. I went to Bob Proctor, somebody who I've been following for years. Now, he went to heaven a few years ago, but his videos are still here. You can find them on YouTube. I had to figure out what my subconscious mind was doing because I was limiting myself. I finally caught it one day when I had an entire health anxiety situation around a problem that I never would have had. I had to stop and ask myself, what just happened to cause my brain to break like this? It was the success I was having on the charts, of course. It wasn't the money I was making, but somewhere inside, I didn't think I actually deserved it. So, if you don't believe you deserve success, you'll find ways to sabotage yourself when it finally arrives. You're going to break your rules. You'll overtrade. You'll increase your sizes for no specific reason. You'll give the money back and return to the same financial situation that you're familiar with that's comfortable to you. Learning the charts is only one side of trading. You also have to understand yourself. Lastly, this is the most important, maybe, out of all this, don't ever quit on yourself. I know it sounds like an old trope you might hear, but oh, winners never quit and quitters never win, right? We've heard that. But genuinely, you can't quit on yourself. Other people can support you, sure, but nobody else can ever give you the discipline and belief required to change your situation. If you don't like where you are and you're going to quit while you're trying to change it, you've taken yourself entirely out of any possibility of success. I think it was Think and Grow Rich, right? Napoleon Hill tells a story commonly known as 3 Feet from Gold. It's about a man who buys some land. He thinks he has gold. He starts searching, but he eventually gives up. He sells his entire property, goes bankrupt. His equipment and his property get purchased by somebody else. And the new owner brings in an expert, determines the gold was only 3 feet away from the original guy stopped digging. Biggest gold strike in Texas history. Had he done his work, all the work, had he suffered through the entire journey, he would have been rich. But because he quit 3 feet too early, somebody else got the rewards. See, persistence by itself doesn't guarantee that you'll become profitable. You still need a real system. You need discipline, risk management, and the ability to learn from your mistakes. but nobody develops lasting skills without persistence. You're going to have losing trades. You're going to have losing days. You might have losing weeks or months. The question is whether you can learn from those experiences without allowing them to convince you that you're incapable of becoming better. That's my video for today. If you found any of this useful, click the subscribe button. If you want my whole system and a faster path through the process, check out below. Use the coupon code, get a special price for 1K a day. Come back to the channel daily. We do our daily updates in 5 to 7 minutes, show you the trades that you should have taken, that you might have taken, and the ones that you missed that could have cost you more money. My name is Stephen J. Campbell. As we say around these parts, just keep swimming, and God's got this.